He brings the changes of seasons and times. He installs and disposes kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those with discernment. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what lies in the darkness, and light dwells with him. Daniel 2:21-22. When the Greek forces reach Modien, a city that stands near modern-day Modien, Maccabees Series, the Kohen Matthias and his sons assemble with the population. After the officers ask him to obey the king's order to commit idolatry in a most respectful way, he rebukes them and refuses. As a Jewish man ascends the steps of the altar to sacrifice to the idol, Matthias decapitates him. He and his sons flee into the desert, where many follow him. After organizing an army, they begin a campaign in which they kill any sinner or one who walked away from the faith that they discover, circumcise the uncircumcised Jewish boys by force, purge the land of pagan altars, and pursue traditional theology. In 166 BC, Matthias dies. He charges his sons with following the leadership of their brothers Simon as counselor and Judah as general in this war against the Syrian Greeks. Soon, Apollonius, governor of Samaria, is sent to suppress the revolt in Judah that the Maccabees are leading. He is killed by Judah, and the Syrian Greek army is either killed off or flees. The spoil is collected and used by the rebels. After the battle, Saron, the Syrian general, invades with a large army and meets Judah's army at Beth-horon. In 165 BC, Matthias chooses Ptolemy, Nicator, and Gargas to lead 40,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry into a campaign against the rebels. Encamping at Emmaus, they receive regional traders bringing immense amounts of gold and silver, Jewish slaves, and allies from Syria and the Philistines. Judah and his brothers restore the ruins of their people to fight for the people in the temple in the face of certain death. At Mizpah, the rebel force fasts, prays, and wears sackcloth and ash. Upon reading Torah and consulting the divine, they cry out to the divine a prayer of distress. Then they sound the shofars and shout. In accordance with Torah, Judah appoints army, division, platoon, company, and squad leaders. After he removes from the ranks those engaged, building houses, growing vineyards, or are cowards. The army, consisting of 3 army division leaders, 30 army platoon leaders, 60 army command company leaders, and 300 army squad leaders, march and encamp south of Emmaus. After hearing of a surprise attack that the Greeks were launching, Judah moves his force out of their camp, which is then entered by the pagans. In the ensuing battle, which commences at dawn the next day, the 1,000 cavalry and 5,000 infantry of the Greeks are crushed. As they retreat, their rear are all killed in action. The army of Judah sees the remaining Greek forces in the hills, which had planned to attack, flee to the Philistines. As the Greek camp burns, a great amount of gold and silver and cloth dyed blue and sea purple, and great riches are carried away as the Judeans sing hymns. The report of the Greek failure is given to Laius, who is perplexed at how his plan has failed and the order of the king has not been carried out. In 164 BC, Lysias musters an army of 60,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry, which marches into Edom and encamps at Bethzur. Judah meets them there with his 10,000 soldiers who are ready to live free or die in martyrdom for the glory of the Lord. In the ensuing battle, 5,000 Greek sons fall. The rest of the army flees to Antioch, and Lysias sends for mercenaries. Judah and his brothers fortify and station a garrison at Bezer. They lead their army to the holy city. Here they fortify and station a garrison on Mount Zion, or Zion, and fights the Greek garrison in the citadel. More importantly, they cleanse the sanctuary and remove the defiled stones to an unclean place. As for the defiled altar of burnt offering, they tear it down and place the rubble in a nearby location until a Nebi or prophet could instruct them as to what to do with them. After building the new altar in accordance with Torah, they turned their attention to the interior of the Beit HaMikdash, or the temple. They restore every door, decoration, vessel, tapestry, and piece of holy furniture. However, one of these is the menorah. On December 13th, 164 BC, the temple is dedicated, but the menorah only has 1 day's oil supply. They pray, and the divine preserves the oil until December 19th. Judah and his brothers and all the assembly of Israel determined that every year at this season, the days of dedication of the altar shall be observed with joy and gladness from Kislev 25th to Tevet 2nd. Around the same time, Antiochus IV dies after failing to conquer Elemius and having become sick, hearing that his plan for the destruction of the Judeans has failed, making him a mockery of everyone. He leaves Philip as regent of his empire until his son is old enough to rule. In the wake of the massacres upon the Judeans occurring, Judah leads the army and crushes the Edomite army. As for the sons of Bani, they are immolated when their tower is burned by Judah's army. Turning the sword to the east, they attack the Edomites and strike them down. After conquering Jazer, Judah leads his army to liberate the Gilead Judeans who had fled to Dathima and they were under siege by a Greek coalition. However, on the way, Judah sends his brother Simon with 3,000 soldiers to liberate the Galileans, while Judah and his brother Jonathan go to liberate Gilead with 8,000. Encountering the Nabateans, Jonathan and Judah are informed of all that has happened to the Gilead Judeans and a massive attack that has been planned. They attack Bozrah and annihilate every man and child, sparing the women and daughters. They burn the city and seize the spoil. They go on to liberate Dathima. With prayer, shouting, and the sound of the shofar, Judah leads his army to attack the rear of Timothy's army, which flee before they can be attacked fully. Timothy leaves 8,000 of his rank dead on the field. After crossing the nearby stream, he rounds up his army and go on to march toward Raphon. Upon learning from spies of their whereabouts and having Arab allies, Judah attacks them at Raphon after crossing the stream and not allowing the army to encamp, which is the hope of Timothy, so he could launch a surprise attack. With Timothy's army having fled unarmed to Kenim, Judah had the aforementioned town burned to the ground. Leaving with a group of Gilead Judeans to immigrate to Judah, Judah sends a message for safe passage through the territory of Ephron. Upon being refused passage, every man and child is killed. The women and daughters are spared. The town of Ephron is razed and plundered. On the return trip, Judah rallies more and more troops and Judeans until they come to Mount Zion. As for Simon and his generals, they fight Gorgas. In the aftermath of the battle, 2,000 Judeans fall due to pride of the generals. Judah attacks Hebron and Ashdod. The Greek garrison in the citadel has been attacking Judeans inside the holy city. In response, Judah attacks the citadel and kills most of the Greek soldiers there. 9 or 10-year-old king is enraged that Hellenistic Jews have been killed by the Judeans and sends a coalition of Greek and mercenary soldiers consisting of 100,000 infantry, 20,000 cavalry, and 32 war elephants to invade. At Bezer, they prepare siege weapons and fortifications, which in turn are attacked and burned by the Maccabean army. Judah marches from the holy city to Beth Zachariah. Upon seeing the war elephants, which the Greeks have, the Judean rear begins to retreat. The front lines see Judah's brother Eleazar charge an elephant, plunge his sword into the beast's belly, and is crushed underneath. The Maccabean army flees to their stronghold in the nearby mountains. While besieging the holy city, the army of the Greeks grows weak as their supply lines, due to a famine, have begun to fade. Upon learning that Philip is regent over the land until Antiochus, son of Antiochus IV, is old enough to rule, Lysias orders the withdrawal of his forces from the holy city and establishes peace with the forces in the holy city. However, they return later and tear the walls of the holy city down before leaving for Antioch. When he reaches Antioch, Lysias attacks Philip, defeats him, and sets Antiochus V upon his father's throne. Here is the final conclusion. Now that you have heard everything, fear the Lord and keep his mitzvot. This is what being human is all about. For the Lord will bring to judgment everything we do, including every secret, whether good or bad. Ecclesiastes 12:13-14.